My entitled father-in-law pressures my husband into getting a job interview, but it all completely backfires, with my father-in-law not only making a fool of himself, but also going out of his way to literally try and take the CFO's job right in front of his face, claiming that he's way more qualified than this idiot. And I'm honestly still blown away by his behavior, because this seriously has not settled well with me or my husband. Here's what happened. So my father-in-law is what you would call a typical old entitled jerk, and after 38 years of working at the same business, he has now been laid off. He just turned 59, and he has never worked for another company or looked for a job since he was a teenager. He pretty much got hired straight out of college. Despite it all, my father-in-law was convinced that he'd get a new job within weeks. My father-in-law is a delusional and headstrong man, and it's been about 2 months, and he hasn't even had a call back. Right now, he is spiraling. He discovered the nightmare that is LinkedIn, and is now posting insane things on LinkedIn. And he doesn't even understand that it isn't like Facebook. My father-in-law then basically bullied my husband into arranging him for an interview for a job at his friend's company since they posted an opening on LinkedIn. The job aligned with his skills and it had a decent wage. And sure, it won't pay like his old job, but it's an easy job with fair wages, great hours, and fantastic benefits. And my husband even did a couple of mock interviews with him. Now, a normal, sane person would be grateful and put their best foot forward for the interview, but not my father-in-law. He was rude to the receptionist because she didn't immediately offer him refreshments. He huffed and puffed because he was so upset that he had to wait. He was angry when he was told that he would get interviewed by the operations director and the finance manager instead of the CFO. He was rude, obnoxious, and bullish throughout the entire interview. My father-in-law then spent half the interview talking garbage about the CFO for not being a man of his word, because apparently he was supposed to be interviewed by the CFO, but at the last minute he no longer could. And then the other half of the interview, he spent that time trying to take the CFO's job as he was better qualified. In the last 15 to 20 minutes of the interview, the CFO and the CEO stepped in to say hello, and his rude self continued to talk garbage to the CFO right in his face. Straight after the interview, my husband got a call from his friend, and his friend was livid. My husband apologized profusely, and his friend was gracious enough to accept the apology. My husband and I both asked our father-in-law how the interview went, and he said he had a man-to-man moment with the CEO, and that the ignorant CFO friend of my husband will soon be out of a job. The man is so far into his delusional mindset that he simply couldn't believe it when my husband told him he's never getting a job there. My husband spent pretty much half the day yesterday cussing him out on the phone, and then after work, he drove down to his father's and then spent another hour just calling him out on all of his garbage. And I'm still absolutely blown away by the way my father-in-law acted. Yeah, that guy's a complete moron. Like seriously, who would go into an interview like that and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the CFO's position right here and now? Like, this guy came into the interview process completely wrong. First of all, this guy was completely delusional from the beginning. Not to mention the fact that he basically bullied the original poster's husband into getting this interview in the first place. But then when he finally shows up to the interview, he not only bullies the receptionist, but also tries to take the CFO's job. Like, this guy is out of his mind if he thinks this is okay. There is literally no reason for this kind of behavior. Like, what a terrible first impression. It's almost like he decided halfway through this interview that he didn't want the job that he was going for, but instead he was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the CFO's job. I'm way more qualified than this idiot, only to then express that opinion in front of the CFO and the CEO. Like, you can tell this guy never had any other job besides the one he got laid off from. So hopefully you guys don't have to deal with this guy anytime soon, because your father-in-law sounds like an absolute nut job. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for siding with my friend about her husband's unfair inheritance choices? Because right now he is very upset with me, and right now I really don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So my friend is married to a much older guy, and they have 2 kids that are elementary school age. This is her first marriage and his second, and he has 2 kids from his first marriage. My friend, let's call her Irene, works in education. She doesn't have a huge salary, but she does okay. While her husband, we'll call him Carl, will retire next year, and he's retiring from a very well-paying job. They live in the home that he bought before they met, only his name is on the deed. They pool their finances for household expenses, and she also contributes to the mortgage. With their recent marriage came the issue of organizing their affairs, among which was a will. The problem is that Carl is dead set on wanting his inheritance split equally between his 4 kids and Irene. This means they each inherit 20%, regardless of their ages or situation, with no caveats about leaving Irene and the younger kids in the house while the kids are underage. Essentially, Irene will have to sell the house to give each of the kids their share. Carl also doesn't want to make different arrangements while his two youngest kids are underage, as he is adamant that they should be treated equally. While this is fine on principle, the reality is that Carl will most likely be the first to pass away, and given his age, it's not likely to happen while his kids are still underage. The notary was a bit baffled by his choices, which he brought up at the meeting to discuss the terms. Irene had no idea this was Carl's plan, and she feels vulnerable and honestly, understandably so in my opinion. The notary tried to suggest to Carl that it would be more prudent to set conditions about the ages of the kids, and perhaps also to have a surviving spouse live in the house, which is then sold and distributed among the kids once the spouse passes away too, with all of that being split up equally, of course. Now, here's the thing. Carl was not open to any provisions that the notary suggested for Irene having some form of buffer while the kids are still at home. He all but called Irene a gold digger and said he was sure that she was resourceful enough to take care of the kids, but that he had to think about 4 kids and not just 2. Carl seems to love all 4 kids equally, and as a side note, his older kids do not like Irene, and that is mutual. They sided with their mother in the divorce, since Irene met Carl after the divorce, which the ex and the older kids don't believe. Irene came back from the notary crying her eyes out. I dropped off something at their house by chance and came while they were having an argument about Carl's choices. Carl considers me to be a rational, intelligent person in his words and asked what my opinion was. But when I sided with Irene, he got angry with me and called me a jerk, all because I didn't realize that important life choices should be made with logic and not emotions. But I pointed out that his choices seem illogical and potentially harmful to his 2 younger kids, but he just straight up disagreed. So honestly, am I the jerk for speaking up in the way that I did? Because right now, I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, and I think Carl absolutely needs to check himself before he ruins his relationship with Irene. The way he has this set up now really does kind of ruin Irene, because she's not gonna have a place to live. And for him to be like, oh, you're just a gold digger, what are you talking about? That's insane in my opinion. So no, you are definitely not the jerk for speaking your mind, because this guy absolutely had it coming. My entitled manager says that she's gonna write me up with salary deduction if I won't give a doctor's note for wanting my time off. So I decide to maliciously comply, forcing her to not only give me 3 extra days of paid sick leave, but also getting paid out the 120 hours overtime that I wasn't given. And I'm honestly so satisfied by getting this revenge. Here's what happened. So I've been working for this company for 3 years already. I work on retail, and our managers are always micromanaging and will write us up each time, even just by breathing. And you can tell that this is how they really are, just so far up all of our noses all the time. Especially since one time, I was written up for eating during my lunch break in our shop, but that's a story for another time. Now, for just a bit of background, my days off are scheduled every Thursday, and I was already feeling sick before my day off. I had waited until this day to rest and hope that I could feel better, but when the end of my day off comes along, I still feel sick. So I inform my boss if I can use my excess hours and not come to work the next day since I am so sick. For a bit of context, our company never pays for our overtime, but expects us to work 12 hours every single day, and every day they give us 2 hours excess. And since I've never requested until that particular day, I had racked up about 120 excess hours overtime, which can be used for days off. I had only requested 1 extra day off, which would amount to maybe 10 hours to be deducted from my long extra hours accumulated. But it was then that my boss did something that honestly blew my mind. She said she was gonna write me up if I don't provide a doctor's note, and she informed me that even if I provide one, she won't deduct it to my hours. So I comply, and I went to the doctor, and I take a medical note, and I was given a 3-day recommended rest, and I sent it to my manager. So now she has no choice but to let me have 3 additional days of paid sick leave, and I won't be back to the shop until Monday, instead of just giving me the 1 day so I can get some rest. Saturday comes along, and the shop has a lot of issues without me, and my reliever is having a hard time coping from work, so my manager actually calls me, and you know what? I just didn't respond to any of her messages, nor any of her calls, and I just wanted to rest well. Fast forward to Monday, and I actually reported her to the company to the labor's claim. The company was forced to pay me the 120 hours of overtime, and it's so great to see things work out in my favor. Yeah, that's a classic case of a manager having some kind of power trip, and instead of just listening to their employee and being like, okay, you get the extra day off, they now get to deal with their employee being gone for 3 days instead of 1. Seriously, just give people the time off that they need to feel better. I will never understand a manager who's going to be like, oh, if you take any hours off without a doctor's note, I'm going to write you up. Like, that is so counterintuitive, and I would hate having to work for someone like that. So good for the original poster for reporting them and getting those overtime hours, because the way she was treating you is absolutely unacceptable. Entitled coworkers demand that me and my department never use their computers ever again, despite the fact that the only time we use their computers is when we're covering their shift. So I decided to maliciously comply, resulting in them scrambling to find someone to cover for them when I refused to do so. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I used to work permanent nights. On nights, we often had sickness at the last minute that no one was willing to come in and cover. So we all used to help out one another. We didn't do it for the praise or for the additional money, even though there wasn't any. We did it because we were colleagues for years, and there was literally no one else. Inevitably, our work was taken for granted. The managers never thanked us for helping them out of this mess, but they also started to assume that we would cover everything. So they made less and less effort to arrange cover for absence, or even planned absences that they knew about in advance. One night before work, I came into work and received an awful email complaining about staff in our department using the computers of another department. Now, we had our own computers, but the only time my department ever used the other department's computers was when we were covering their absence. The email chain showed the other department complaining about us to my manager, who sent out an email to all the night staff in my department saying to us, "From now on, do not use the other department's computers." Now, when I read that, I was fuming because, as I said, we only did it to help out and to stop the other departments having to cover night staff on such short notice. So I thought to myself, okay, fine, that's how it is then. The very next night, the other department is short-staffed again. The supervisor on that shift asked me to cover their department, but I just straight up say, nope, I can't do that. I've been told not to use their computers by my manager. The supervisor then says, oh no, that's okay, you can use them. But I say to her, no, I can't. My manager told me not to under any circumstances. So she gets her manager to call me, the same manager who complained about us, and says to me, for this one shift, you can use our computers, as if she's doing me any kind of favor. So I say to her, no, I really can't. You are not my manager. I cannot defy my manager's instructions. And you know what? Because they can't get my manager on the line that late at night, another supervisor had to come in last minute and cover the shift. And I honestly am so glad I was able to get back at these people, especially after all the mess they made for me and my coworkers. Yeah, these people found out that you shouldn't bite the hand that feeds you, because it sounds like the original poster and their department literally bailed out this other department so many times. So for them to act like, oh my god, stop using our computers, and completely forgetting that this department literally covers your back almost all the time, like that in my opinion shows how spoiled this other department was, and it further proves in my mind that, you know what, sometimes it is okay to say no, that you should never be expected to cover someone else's shift, especially if that person's gonna act this ungrateful. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her daughter would have a better life if she gave up her vices? Because right now she is very mad at me, and at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female, and I've been friends with someone we will call Emily since middle school. We're the same age, and I just want to preface a couple things. Emily and I had similar upbringings. We grew up on the poverty line, using food banks and being close to being evicted as children. I am also child-free by choice, as I am self-aware enough right now to know that I'm too selfish of a person now to have children. I had nothing as a kid, and I want all my things right now. Emily also is a relatively selfish person, but she is definitely not self-aware and does not like to sacrifice her toys in life for anybody. Unfortunately, this also includes her 6-year-old daughter, who we will call Emma. Emily has many vices that she enjoys. She enjoys shopping, alcohol, fast food, and most of all, cigarettes and the herb, if you know what I mean. Money is tight for everyone, but she ensures that she always has what she needs, especially those last two. In the past few months, Emma has asked for several things, and the answer has always been no. The biggest one being a bike for her birthday, and then more recently, swim lessons, as it's June and her friends all go to the rec center to swim. Yesterday, while running errands, we were in a store and Emma asked her again if she could have swim lessons because she wanted to be able to go to the pool with her friends over summer break from school. Emily once again told her that they were too expensive and that they couldn't afford it. And when she said that, Emma started to cry. Emily apologized to her and explained that money was tight before turning around to pay for her 2 cartons of cigarettes. When we got back to their place, Emma, who was still upset, went to the couch and put on a movie. I pulled Emily into her bedroom and I took the opportunity to explain that I believe it's important to Emma to take those lessons. Emily then repeated that she simply didn't have the money, and I said to her, you don't have the money for her. her, but you have the money to smoke? Emily then immediately became defensive and called me a jerk who just doesn't understand what it's like to be a single mom. Now, I agreed with her, but I reminded her that we both know what it's like to miss out on things in childhood, and it felt like Emma was going to suffer the same fate. Emily basically told me to leave if I was going to accuse her of being a bad parent before leaving her bedroom and storming outside to have a cigarette. I ended up leaving after saying goodbye to Emma, and now Emily is refusing to speak to me. I am just worried that this kid is going to be on the outside looking in because her mom isn't prioritizing her, but I also know that I could have worded things much better. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now, I'm not sure what to do with Emily. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all, because it really does sound like Emily's neglecting her daughter pretty much across the board. And also, it's not a bad thing for a kid to have swim lessons. Like, that really is a valuable skill to have no matter who you are, but most especially if you're a kid. Leaving her to figure out how to swim on her own is just completely irresponsible. And she's missing out on having fun with her friends, which in my opinion is just so unfair. So no, you're not the jerk for telling the truth, because clearly, based on how defensive Emily got, this is something that she clearly has been thinking about. And just because you said what she was probably thinking, in my opinion, doesn't make you judgmental or a bad friend. Am I the jerk for exposing my mom's lifelong grudge against me, all because I was born on the wrong day that she didn't plan for? Here's what happened. So to start things out, I'm the middle child of 5 siblings, and I always knew that my mom treated me very differently from the rest of my siblings. It caused my parents' marriage to end because my dad made it very clear that he wouldn't tolerate her being so different with me, and this was after he tried to figure out why she was so different with me. A few close friends knew and said it was postpartum depression from when she had me, that apparently only affected her ability to bond with me and not any of my 4 siblings, just me, the middle child. I have a sibling younger than me and she bonded with her just fine. I was a teenager when I got into a fight with my mom one day and she accused me of always hating her and never wanting her to be happy. I asked what she meant by that, and she told me that I had to come into this world on the one day that she had other plans, that it was bad enough I was overdue when I was born, but I apparently prevented her from reading a book that released that day that she made plans to read months in advance. She told me that I just had to be born that day, so she was too tired to read it on the release date, and that she was weeks behind. She said that I couldn't even be born normally like my siblings, and I was a C-section baby. She told me that I messed up her plans so bad, and I never even seemed to care about it. Then she mentioned how much I cried when she was around, and how good I did with my dad. She said it made her seem like she was such a monster, and none of my other siblings were like that. She told me I clearly always wanted to come between her and dad, and she was pretty serious about it too, with her finishing up by saying that I started screwing her over the day I was born. Now, it really shocked me when she told me all of this. At first, I didn't believe it, and I just didn't want to believe it. Dad and I even did a DNA test around that time because we were like, okay, maybe she's making up a dumb reason so we won't know that she cheated. But I am definitely my dad's kid. The DNA confirmed it. My relationship with my mom is as bad as the day I was born, apparently, and I get a hard time from some family friends and extended family members who see me not being close with my mom as me being awful to her for no reason. They put the bad relationship on me. And at my grandparents' house on Saturday, I got so tired of the comments and my mom sneering at me the whole time that I finally exposed what she said to me when I was a teenager and the blame that she put on me for being born on the wrong day as the reason why we have a bad relationship. My mom half admitted because she got so angry that she verbally lashed out at me. It created an absolute nightmare, and some family members think I made a big deal out of nothing, but others were disgusted by my mom. I was told I was wrong to expose her like that, and my mom said that I had no business doing that. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Yeah, your mom's a massive piece of garbage. Like seriously, your mom's a horrible person. Who would hate their child all because you couldn't read a book that you were waiting for months in advance? Like seriously, that is really crazy for someone to say, and there's no way that's a rational reason why you would hate your kid. Like the original poster didn't ask to be born at that time. Like they had literally no control over that. So for the mom to be like, oh yeah, you ruined my life the day that you were born. Like no, he didn't. He didn't do anything to you. The original poster has been putting up with this kind of treatment for like their entire life. They've been badmouthed, they've been treated terribly, and then when the truth is finally let out, they find out that this is the reason why she doesn't like him. Like, I'm sorry, I love to read just like the next person, but for her to seriously treat her child like this, all because she couldn't read a book on the release date, like that goes beyond being a bad mother. That straight up proves that this lady's insane. And you know what? When it comes to you exposing her in front of the entire family, I would have done the exact same thing. Anybody who's like, wow, you made a big deal out of nothing. Or people telling you, oh, you were wrong to expose her like that. It's like, what are you talking about? She's literally being antagonistic and actively making horrible comments about the original poster behind their back, or even just making snide faces at them. Like at that point, after 21 years of dealing with that, I would have exposed her right there on the spot and felt no remorse. So anyone trying to defend her actions are complete morons, and these are not the kind of people you want in your life. And in my opinion, I think it absolutely is your business to tell everybody the truth, that your insane mother hates you because she couldn't read a book, because that's what this all just boils down to. That's the entire reason she doesn't like you, and that is just not a good reason at all. So no, I would not feel guilty about this in the slightest, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would be making plans to never talk to her ever again, because this behavior is legitimately crazy, and you do not deserve this in the slightest. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.